There's nothing particularly tricky about cutting the stock to length. One thing you do have to be aware of is that the cuts that you get on the boards from the lumberyard are not always square. It doesn't show up too well here, but this particular board, it's off a little bit. So you're going to want to trim the ends of the boards square before you measure and cut them to the final length. And you can save yourself from measuring. If you cut one board, you can lay it on top of the next piece of stock and just even the ends up and use that to mark them. This way you won't be using the tape measure as much, and it also guarantees that each of the pieces of stock are the same length. And you can also lay the boards down and cut more than one of them at the same time. If you are cutting these on a miter saw, you want to make sure that you support the free end of the board here. And you can see here I'm using one of the crickets I had shown you how to make in a previous video. But anything will do as long as you keep the board flat on the miter saw table. So according to the drawing, we're going to come in 2 inches from the end, and we'll make a mark with the knife at that point, and then we have to come down 3.5. So I did a quick tip video on this little trick. Makes it a little bit easier to be accurate. Rather than adding the 3.5 to the 2 inches and marking it at 5.5, what I've done is I've moved my ruler over so that the 10-inch mark is hitting the knife mark I previously made, and then I'll come over here to 13.5 and mark there. The reason this is better is because you're actually seeing the number 3.5. The 3 is right there for the 13, and you go over a half. Sometimes when you do it the other way, you can make addition errors in your head, and it's just more accurate this way. We'll take the square, put the knife in the mark, and then transfer that over to the other side. You'll notice I put the knife by putting the knife in and bringing the square up to it, I'm assuring that I'm in the right place there. If you're doing this with a pencil, do the same thing. Put the pencil where you did your first pencil mark, and then move that over and do the other side. And then we'll do the other thing. We'll do the same thing on the other end. Put the knife in the mark, slide the square up to it, and that will give us our 2 outside marks for the that's the width of the mortise. Now there's several ways you can mark where to put this on here. We are going to use a 3/4 inch mortise in the 1.5 inch stock. So what you can do is, if you have a mortise gauge, which is what this is, you can set the 2 pins on there. Hope you can see this. Sorry for my crappy camera equipment here. This is not giving you the best view of things. You want to set that right at the width of the chisel, and then what you can do is just kind of eyeball where that's going to go and tighten it. Take it and push down on it. Make 2 little dents. I have to take these apart to do this. And then come from the other side. If the 2 pins fall into the dents, that means you've got this centered. This is slightly off. It's slightly too big. So I got to move this in just a tad. Try that again. Put the 2 marks. All right, that's right on. So what we can do now, let me put these back together. Take your mortise gauge and set it up on the even with the marks that you made measuring from the end, and then come down here and scratch out the outside of the mortise. Just go between the 2 lines. Don't go beyond your knife points on there, because that will you'll see that when you in a finished product, and we don't want to see that scratch there. So we'll do that to both of these. And we'll leave that set because we're going to need to use that when we do the tenons. Now, if you do not have a mortise gauge, and you may not, what you can do is set your square to the distance from the edge of this to the edge of the mortise, the edge of the board to the edge of the mortise. Now in this case, we've got 1.5 inch board. We're taking a 3/4 inch mortise out of it. That means there will be 3/4 left on the two sides together. Will be 3/4. Half of that is 3/8. So if you set your square to 3/8, you can hold it. Do it this way so you can see a little better. You can hold it against the side, put the pencil there, and just slide along, and that'll give you the mark you need. What I'm going to do also here is I'm going to come out to where our marks are, where our knife marks are, measuring the distance this way, and I'm going to just draw across there. Again, don't draw all the way across, because then you'll have to sand that mark off when we get to that point. Just go roughly to where the sides are, so that'll show you where the end of the mortise are, and you can do this with a knife also. Alright, so that's the two that has marked out. Hope you can see that. That has marked out the ends of the mortise, where it starts and stops, and the width. I want to get as much gluing surface on this as we can as we go through here. So I want to put this pretty deep into the do it this way so you can see it a little better. Pretty deep into the stile, the rail. So what we're going to do is, since this is 3.5 inches deep, we're going to go 3 inches deep. I'm going to set my square to 3 inches to so that as we do this we can check it. Now there's several ways we can do this. We could actually chisel the whole thing out just with the chisel. This is very soft, so it wouldn't be a lot of work to do so. But what I'm going to do to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to drill down into here in order to take the bulk of the waste out, and then we'll use the chisel to clean it up. So it is important that we get the mortise perpendicular to the face of the wood. Otherwise, when you put the rails going across there, they may be tilted one way or the other, and that's not going to be good for the door, and it's going to look terrible also. So there's a number of ways you can do this. If you have a mortising machine, obviously that's the easiest thing to do. Most of us do not. I do not have one. You can chisel this out by hand. This is pretty soft wood, so that it's not terribly laborious. But the there's several videos online showing you how to do this by hand, so I'm not going to go over that. But obviously that's the cheapest thing to do, because you probably have chisels and a hammer. A couple other options are, this is a doweling jig, and what you do is you clamp this onto the work with the clamp, and then you on here you can select what size hole. For example, that would be, that one's 1/2 inch, and drill down through there, and that would take care of that. It would give you holes that are perpendicular to this, as long as you set it down properly. If you're going to use something like this, put a piece of plywood or something on each side, so that when you clamp it onto here, you're not crushing the cedar, because this is very soft and it could crush. So that's another option. And there's different styles of these doweling jigs. I got this one at a yard sale. I think I paid like $2 for it or something. Another option is a drilling guide. This is, you can set this up so this is perpendicular to the surface, and you just put it on there, and you attach your drill to this, and you can go down, and that will give you a straight down hole on it. So that's another option. Now, if you don't have any of those things, and most of the people watching this probably do not, what I did was I made a jig. This is just a piece of plywood and a piece of solid wood that I planed down to 3/8 of an inch. You could also use a piece of 3/8 inch plywood to do this part of it. I don't have any 3/8 inch plywood around, so I just took a piece of solid wood and did this, and I just took 2 brads and put it together. And what you do is you put this on here and you drop it down, and then when you drill, let me get a drill bit here to demonstrate with. When you drill, you just hold the drill bit flat against there, and that will give you a upside down. That will give you a that'll make sure that the hole is perpendicular to the face, that way, and clamp the board on here. And what we will do is take a piece, as I said, over here, come around and clamp that. Take our drill and put our bit in there. You want a bit that's the same diameter all the way down, so that you can put it against there. If you have one that's got a reduced shank on it, that's not going to work because it's going to be hard to keep it straight. So what we'll do is put this in here. And we'll hold the bit against the side here, against the jig, and then we'll the nice things about cedar is it smells nice when you're working it. All right, so I cut that down, make it a little bit, allow me to put the drill in a little bit deeper. That's better. And what I'll do is I'll just flip that around and do the other side. I can use a fence to guide the chisel straight down, so again we don't get that a distortion in the we don't get that out of line with the top here. And this is so soft that you don't even need the mallet. You can just go straight down and take care of that. And then I'll flip the fence to the other side here in a second. And we'll do that side. Let me just get this waste out of here. Get down in there further. We may need to use the hammer a little bit. I don't think I mentioned that you could do the holes on a drill press if you have one. I do have one. The problem with that is this is kind of long, and it's a little bit awkward to maneuver it. You need to put a support out away from the drill press on another end of it. So if you don't have an adjustable one, it's a little tedious. So that is another option though. While I'm doing this, I am not levering against the end, because what will happen is you'll bruise this, and then if you go beyond where the line is, you will see that in the finished product. So I don't want to, I'm staying away from the ends. Should also put a piece of tape on the chisel, so I know I'm all the way down there. Because I could, this being that soft, I could easily chisel past the point that I want to be at and break through, which I do not want to do. Let's mark out the tenons. We're going to come in and mark this, oops, at 2.5. Just put the knife on that, and we will just go across there and make a mark. It's all right to mark all the way across there, because once this is assembled, that's going to be against the face of the stiles anyway, so that will not be visible. So we'll make a mark there. I will detach these two, take the clamp off of it, and what we're going to do, which I should have done before I clamped it, take your knife or your pencil and go up against the outside edge and just put a mark on it with that. And do one at a time here and get that out of the way. Once we lay that flat, we can put the knife in the little knots that we made with the knife and score across there, and that will be the as we cut that, that'll be the end of the tenon. Should be able to use the mortising gauge with the setup that we had for marking the mortises, and just go down here and mark along there. So you should not have to reset that. It should work out. It should come out just fine. And what we will do is on the other side, we have a mark right there where that the face line is, face cut. We'll put the knife in that little notch, and then just go across, and that'll show us where the end of that is. Now we want to be consistent, so we used how did I do that? We used this side as the reference when we mark this, so when we flip it over, we will again use that side as the reference. This way, if there's any variation in this at all, it'll take care of that. So just go down there. And now we've got that marked. We've got the, we'll cut, oops, gotta do one more thing. We need to extend this line around the corner here. And that'll mark the other shoulder. So now we have it marked on all four sides. So now that we've laid this out, we'll go ahead and cut these. What we're going to do is the line across the face of this we're going to deepen that a little bit. Put the knife in the slot there. Go across that a few times. And then take the chisel and just go down at an angle there. Don't go crazy. Just push it and wiggle it down in there. And we're going to take a little chip out of there. So get rid of those. And then we'll, at this point, there's enough of a line there. I don't need the square because I'm following the line. So let's go back, score across there a few more times. And again, take the chisel and wiggle it down in there to break out that little triangular piece of wood. Now, so we have a shoulder on there to put the saw up against. So this way we guarantee that the cut across there is at a right angle to the edge of the board. As we get a cut straight across. And what we'll do, start the cut on that side, look over the top, and we will cut down to the line that we marked on that side with the mortise gauge. We'll come back and do the same thing on this side. Cut it down there, and then just lay the saw across the top. And see if we're right here. Lay the saw across the top and finish that cut. Now, what we could do is take the saw, clamp this up, and cut along those lines on both sides and across the end. Oh, by the way, I don't think I showed this on camera. When you mark the mortises, you want to go around the end and mark it there as well, so you know where you're going to cut. Actually, going to do here is I'm going to take the chisel and I'm going to split this piece off, and then we'll fine tune it with some more chisel work. So this cedar is very straight grained, so when we chisel this, it should follow the grain down there and not go one way or the other and cause a problem. So if you have wild grain, it may split off this way, or you may not get much off at all. You start deep here and it may go down to nothing on here. This cedar happens to be particularly straight grained, so we shouldn't have a problem with it. Often I'm not close to the line there, and just to make sure that that's going to split properly. So on this one, sounds does seem to be splitting pretty good. And we'll just clean the rest of it up with the chisel. So I've gotten the bulk of the waste off there. If I had sawed this, what you do is you turn it, and you will have to clamp it to do this. Cut one side, cut the other side, and then go down and join the, and take out the part in the middle that you hadn't cut. So, but we got, we're pretty close to where we need to be. We don't have to chisel a heck of a lot off here, and this is very soft, so the chiseling is pretty easy. So we'll clamp this back down to the bench. Take our chisel, and we'll try to put it on the line that we marked with the mortise gauge, and just make sure that's good and tight, and go across there. And same thing on the end. Follow the line on the side of it and the line on the end. And once we get that, once we get that established, you can just lay the back of the chisel flat where you have started the chisel in the first place, and just go across there on the flat. And this will clean out any material there that is standing above the line. And the technique is just take two hands and just go across there, and you'll see that's now flat. If you are uncomfortable doing this, and if you haven't done it before, you might be, again, it's better to practice on some scrap. So make some scrap, take some scrap and make some practice mortise and tenon joints, and that way you won't be making mistakes on cheaper material. Don't make your mistakes on the more expensive stock. And that's a general practice that's good. It's a general practice that you'll find useful. If I haven't done this in a while, in fact, the last time I did this was probably a couple years ago, sometimes I'll just take some scraps of stuff. It doesn't even have to be the same size as what you're working with. Just take a couple scraps and just practice a little bit, just to get yourself back in tune. If you find you're not able to get into any of the corners or whatever just because of how you got it set up, just flip the board around and work from the other side. So that is a general principle in woodworking. When we started the chisel on this corner and went in a little bit and went down the two lines that we marked, you've established a reference face, a reference surface, and from that reference surface you can go across and do the rest of the work without having to constantly measure or worry about whether you're going cockeyed or anything like that. That was the same principle as when we marked the mortises out. I'm sorry, the tenons out. We measured off the same face, or marked off the same face of the board, so that we were consistent going through. So you always want to establish a reference surface of some type of reference point and measure from there, and that way things tend to come out more accurately. So we got this end done, and we got 3 more ends. I'm not going to show you that on camera. You see how to do it. We left this pretty fat. I think I'm going to have to do quite a bit of trimming on the ends to have it fit those mortises, but I wanted to, you can't put material back on, you can always take it off, so I would rather have the tenons a little bit thicker than they needed to be. And by the way, this is not terribly important, but in the tenon, this part is called the cheek, and the part back here where the notch, where it meets the rest of the board, that's called the shoulder. So we're going to fit the tenon into the mortise. I've already done the other 3. This is the last one. What I'm doing as I go around here is I am marking these so that I know how this fits back together. So what I'm doing is, this is the bottom, so anything under that rail is not going to be visible to anybody. So I'm just taking a nail set and marking it, and I'm putting some dots on there based on which joint is. This is the last one I've done, so it's joint number 4. And what I will do is I will do the same thing on the tenon. So this way, once I fit this together, I will know that these are the 2 that go together when I go to assemble it. So let's slide this in here and see how we're doing. All right, so that is getting quite tight at that point, and we're not all the way down. So let's take that back out. First thing I want to check is I want to make sure there's nothing sticking out down in the mortise. We're going to do most of the adjustments on the tenon, but there may be, as we're chiseling that, there may be some lumps. Actually, there is one right there. there'll be some lumps that you need to take out. I can see down in there the wall of the tenon on this side is not straight. It's got a bow in it, so I need to take something off that. You want to do most of the adjustment on the tenon itself, because this is it's a lot easier to take it off there than here, but I do want to get that little bump out of there. Let's look at it first. I can see, and you probably cannot see this on the camera, but I didn't quite go down to the marked line on this one point, so it is a little bit fatter towards the shoulders than it is to start with. It starts going in fine, but the shoulder, it's jamming about so far down. And we'll take the chisel and we'll work. The front's okay, but towards its shoulder, as I said, that's where we need to work on it. So let's, oops. Let's work back towards the shoulder a little bit. Take a little bit off there. Let's see if that helps. Broke that out a little bit on there. Got to be careful when you're chiseling in that direction. Your best thing to do when you're doing that is to take the chisel, go in here and tap it to make sure that the break line is the line where it's going to break is below where you're chiseling. But I kind of chipped that out a little bit. But it is a garden gate. It's not a piano, so. If you have a little mishap like that, it's not the end of the world. Let's see what I got here. There is a small bump right there, which I'm going to remove. And let's try it again. Alright, that went down quite a bit further, so we're getting there. Another thing which I neglected to do was to, I'm going to put a chamfer in AVE speak along these edges, so that it goes into the mortise a little bit easier. And where's my? Do a little filing on the edge there to accomplish the same thing. And this way, it'll slide down in there a little bit better. Let's try that, see how we make out. All right. Just about all the way in. I'm not going to bore you with doing this over and over again. I got to dig the bottom out just a tad, so I'll go ahead and do that. But basically, that's how you fit them together. In part 4, we'll cut the slats and start getting everything ready for staining. So thanks for watching as always. And thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you next time.